Welcome, everybody. You've been misled about what this is. You've been sold a bill of goods. You've been told things that aren't true. In fact, everything you've been told isn't true. Not maliciously. People don't know. We were all raised within a system by people that did not know what this is, and they did not admit that they didn't know, in most cases, and they insisted on forcing their agenda on each of us. And of course, we as unwitting children, as trusting children, trusting our adults, trusting parents, trusting the society we're raised in, usually more or less accepted that as a framework of interpretation of what's happening here. Which is a real pity. It's a real pity, because what's actually happening here is astounding, is inconceivable. And as a result of this misinterpretation, we cut ourselves off from appreciating what we are, from appreciating what this is, the inconceivable grandeur, the inconceivable beauty, the inconceivable fulfillment of what this intrinsically is. It is that, it has always been that, it cannot not be that, and yet we've been told it's something else. We've been told it's this horrible human life where we have to fight to succeed and make money and try to avoid dying, and then of course it's impossible to avoid dying, so that's a battle we're guaranteed to have lost before we even start. So we're set all sorts of impossible tasks, and we feel like we're failures if we don't complete them. We're set these tasks in spirituality. We have to struggle to try and be like a small handful of exalted masters who are inconceivably, transhumanly perfect, and lowly us can never possibly achieve that. So we spend our lives in meditation and going to churches and joining groups and reading books and whatever we pursue, and trying to remedy this situation, trying to achieve the unachievable. When all along we have and are that which we most fondly, most devoutly wish that we were. We already are that. This is already that. The problem is not this condition. The problem is not your nature, what you are. The problem is misunderstanding what your starting point is, what your actual condition is, what is going on here. And that's the only problem, because it turns out that what is happening here is absolute perfection. This is heaven. It's not even heaven on earth, because there is no earth, it's just heaven. It's transcendental light shining in transcendental space, beyond space and time, in pure divine intelligence. That's what this is. That's what this is made of. That's literally what is happening here. But you probably weren't told that, were you? You probably haven't had that explained to you. You probably haven't had that, wonderful bit of news given to you. So the entirety of our spiritual dilemma is discovering that what you hold this to be, it isn't. This is not what you hold it to be. This is not what you've interpreted it to be. This is not what you've been told it is. It's not what anyone says it is. And when you let go of these holdings it to be this or that, what it actually is becomes completely obvious, becomes nakedly displayed, because it is nakedly displayed. Nothing is hidden, nothing is concealed, nothing is held back. This is clearly as it is, clearly what it is. Complete transcendence is displayed in every aspect, every instant of experience. And the only thing that keeps you from noticing it, if anything, is any idea you may hold that it's other than that. And what this is so astoundingly subtle and complex and rich and dimensional that it can seem to conform to all sorts of misinterpretations. It can seem to be just about anything you want to look at it as being. So it's very accommodating that way, unfortunately. So the only necessary thing in spirituality is to see what this is, see what this already is, see what you already are. Not to achieve anything, not to become something, not even to get rid of anything, not to change anything, not to fix anything. Simply to notice what is already the case and has always been the case. And fortunately this is doable because it is the case. What this is plain to see. What this is clearly displayed, and you are looking at it every instant of your being. You are seeing reality. There's nothing else to see. How could you see it? What would it be made of? If there was some unreality present, what would it be made of? What substance would it consist of? How do you see unreality? You know, if you're seeing something, there's something there, and if there's something there, it's real. And if it's real, it is reality. And if it's reality, it is what this is, which turns out to be absolutely astounding. It's nice that that's the case, you know. We don't make it that way. It doesn't become that way because we're trying to be spiritual or because we're trying to, you know, be clever with our different spiritual approaches and practices and all these sorts of things. It just happens to be that that's just how it is. That's just what this is. This is what it is. It is what it has always been. And it is absolutely inconceivable. So I invite you to feel this astounding experience that's present here now and always. Feel its presence, feel its amazing texture, its amazing slipperiness, the way it instantly disappears forever and appears and disappears forever. Every instant, all of these characteristics. Nothing remains, nothing sticks. And if you are interested in talking about anything, please feel free to. We have a microphone you can speak into so people who are following along on the internet will be able to hear what you have to say. And otherwise, I invite you to just feel this presence, this amazing actuality that is right here. This is real. Your experience is real. It's actually happening. And in actuality there is power, there is effectiveness. Fantasy doesn't do anything, but actuality has staying power.
Peter, could you talk a little bit about dimensionality? Actually, I think what I'm asking about is hyperdimensionality, because I've experienced something but it's not like my typical way of looking, like, say, foreground, background, or, space around me. But it's undefinable, but it's there.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I mean, one of the characteristics of this actuality is that it has infinite dimensions, which sounds very sci-fi and technical and mathematical, but what I mean by that is just that whatever qualities or characteristics or sort of textures of experience you're experiencing, at the same time, right with that, there is more subtleties, more different qualities present in that instant. And there's an unlimited amount of more. It's not like there's whatever you're experiencing and then a little more. There's more than that, and more than that, and more than that, and more than that, and no limit, no end to how much moreness there is. It's like looking into the night sky. You think, oh, I'm just seeing the sky. Yeah, sure, just seeing the sky. You're seeing limitlessness, you're seeing endlessness, you're seeing past seeing, past seeing, past seeing, forever. And not just in terms of bigness, but in terms of sort of alternative qualities, alternative aspects. Like, what does a tomato taste like? You take a bite of a fresh tomato, and it tastes, at first you sort of get a hit of some very superficial qualities, and they're right there, and it's obvious, but how much more can you find? And so you go into it, and you taste. It's like, oh yeah, there's all these little nuances. And you go into those, and the nuances have nuances, and the nuances have nuances. And there's no limit, there's absolutely no limit to the range of qualities, experiential, actual qualities that can be found in any experience, as an actuality. Or taste of wine, or, virtually any experience in any sense field, or a mental experience, or any kind of experience whatsoever, is intrinsically unlimited. Now, we typically don't notice this because we fixate on a few superficial qualities and stop there. We don't let ourselves really acknowledge the astounding range of qualities that are there. You look at somebody's shirt and you say, oh, it's blue, but then look closer. What does blue, how many shades of color are there? And it just opens. It's a universe of shades of color, and the shades have shades, and there's infinite degrees of brightness and darkness and texture, and then other qualities that we don't even have names for, that aren't even color and brightness and texture, but they're there too, because experience is infinitely rich, and this richness is what I mean by dimensionality. And there's no end to the richness. It's not like you can be with an experience and really get how rich it is, and then you sort of get to a point. I've got it now. I've checked that one off the list. You can never get to the end of it, because there's always more. It's endless. It's absolutely bottomless.
Well, is there a value in sort of just going through that exercise that you just mentioned, like savoring every little thing about the tomato? Because I've tried that, but eventually what happens, I don't know what happens first. Whether first I'm just sort of in some kind of a hyperdimensionality and it's just all there, all at once, and I don't, and then I say, oh, wow, that's interesting, and then I just try to look. But then sooner or later, then it just stops, and it's back, and I'm just experiencing it all is, I don't know, all is one, or, it's...
all that's fine, because it's unlimited in an instant, it's unlimited as a prolonged exploration, it's unlimitedness wherever you go with it. And the point of the exercise is to notice that fact.
Right.
It's not like you need to accumulate the extension of the unlimitedness. You can't. It's unlimited, but you can know that it's there. You can know the openness, the unlimitedness, the bottomlessness of these qualities, the infinite richness of the qualities of presence, of the qualities of actual concrete experience.
Right.
And that's the point. It's not a matter of accumulating it or cataloging it or somehow, challenging yourself to get more and more. Because part of the nature of experience is it's continually morphing, so you can't actually do that anyway.
Right.
So as soon as you look at something, it's already become something else, which is another part of the unlimitedness. So the whole thing is very, very slippery and very elusive in terms of trying to pin it down. But that's exactly the point. The point is to discover that. So the point is to discover that it cannot be pinned down.
Right. Sorry, there's hyperdimensionality, and then there's just, I don't know, maybe you could call it hyper-time. I mean, it's just...
Yeah, whatever, sure.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Everything is like that because every aspect of experience is unlimited. Literally unlimited. It literally is a bottomless, endless fullness. There's no end to it, no end to it. It's like deep space or something. Everything. Every aspect of everything. And this is really obvious once you see it. So the trick is to come to see it, to come to notice it, to come to be able to appreciate that. And that, of course, is the revelation, is the proof of unstuckness, is the proof of unseparateness, is the proof of liberation. Because you cannot be trapped in something that is limitless. How could that happen?
Peter, just a question. If, considering that there's so much brainwashing that we have to sort of see or work through or whatever, you think it would be easier to see multidimensionality after death, assuming there is anything
Well, yeah,
like that?
for sure. You will see multidimensionality after death, but you're seeing it right now.
True. And
unfortunately, the brainwashing will probably not cease after death because of the persistence of patterning. The trick is not to... You don't need to solve the brainwashing. You don't need to fix the brainwashing. You don't even need to get through it. You can just bypass it altogether because it's incomplete.
Right.
The great advantage of our situation in terms of this brainwashing, in terms of this sort of cloud of misconceptions that we usually hold and identify with and see ourselves and our lives and our experience in terms of, the great advantage of that is that is little, it's small, it's finite, and it's not very consistent. It's full of holes. It's usually a pretty weak edifice. It's sort of cobbled together and patched together and held together with chewing gum and Scotch tape, and it's just not very stable. And it exists in the context of this vast, open actuality. So reality is much, much bigger than our misunderstanding, than the cloud of our misunderstanding is. And also, this openness is present, it's obvious, it's right here. So you don't need to get around or fix or something or turn off your misconceptions. Just bypass it altogether and go to direct experience, and which is, of course, you already always are in and always are in immediate contact with, and it will show you what it is.
Right. Yeah, because sometimes I've had like moments of sort of revelation. I had one when I woke up in the morning before I really woke up. It was very large panorama or something, you could say. But I'm wondering if that would be more constant. If there was less ego stuff happening, I guess you...
Well, not necessarily. It doesn't need to be more constant. The point is to see it, and it has no stability whatsoever. The very nature of what it is that it's constantly morphing and cascading around and appearing as this and that and the other, and it's constantly pulling the rug out from under itself every instant.
Exactly,
And so it has no stability, and it never will have a stability. It doesn't need to have stability. But when you see what it is, you get that slipperiness, that way of presenting itself as, in sort of relatively simple terms, is always in the context of this openness. And that's the important thing, not to stay with it or to be, now I'm in this bottomlessness and I'm going to just stay here, get out the super glue, I'm just going to stick myself to it.
Yeah.
It's not like that. It doesn't need to be. You just need to see what this is, and when you see what this is, because even confusion, even the brainwashing, even the misinterpretation, is
that
intrinsically this unlimitedness, because that's all there is. That's the only substance of experience to make anything of. So confusion is made of limitless transcendental radiance.
Right. Well, it's sort of like it winks at you.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like, and then...
Well, the process of coming to see this looks like these kinds of flashes and little revelations, and then it may feel like we get sucked back into our bullshit or something, you know, and then this sort of comes and goes. But that's just what the process of coming to see it looks like. And it usually is like that, and it doesn't need to not be like that. And it's not that going back into confusion is losing it. It's not like finding it and losing it, finding it and losing it. It's more that the very nature of the process of it unfolding into itself just happens to look like that.
Right. Because it seems like if one good revelation, even if it's a short one, you go, okay, yeah, everything is that. No matter what, anything happens after that, it's that, doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the nature of it is, as this unfoldment proceeds, it spontaneously tends to deepen. It spontaneously gets stronger and stronger. And sooner or later, you just get more and more profoundly that, this can't leave. Even when it seems to be leaving itself, it's not really leaving itself. It's just that's what it does. That's what it looks like. It can look like anything, and it's wild. It's crazy. It's just zooming around into all these different perspectives, constantly, unstoppably. It always does. I mean, this happens in everyone's experience all the time. If you look at your experience, if people that try to meditate discover this right away. Sit down, be quiet, close your eyes, and try and meditate, be still, and you'll feel like you took acid or something. You feel like you're on a roller coaster. Your mind's throwing you around, and you're thinking this and seeing that, and this is just the inherent dynamism of this radiance itself. It's unstoppably dynamic. It's unstoppably creative. It's completely unstable. It doesn't ever sit into a configuration and stay there with any stability. It never happens. It's always changing and morphing and subtly or grossly or whatever. This is quite obvious. If you look at your experience, you'll notice this is the true. Your experience, this is what we call the passage of time. This is how we know time is passing, because our experience is just constantly changing.
Right. Well, sort of the big takeaway was seeing that that's all there is, and everything is made of that, and comes out of that, and goes, and there's no outside of that.
Right, it's no outside.
It's totally, it's everything, total.
Yeah.
And and also it's totally safe.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's like a dream. Once you're in a dream, how can you possibly be hurt? Because it's just a dream. Even if you get shot or a bear bites your head off or something, who cares? Because you're just dreaming.
Yeah.
And it's like that. This can never depart from itself, so it doesn't matter what it looks like.
Right.
And when you get that, you get that it is so totally safe.
Yeah. Thanks.
And confusion. It's hard to get this when you're in the process of this unfoldment, especially in the earlier stages. But confusion and misunderstanding are some of its major modes.
Oh, right. Yeah.
it is, all of this, we see the spiritual conundrum. Here we are in ignorance and we're suffering and we feel small and we feel separate and we're fighting our way to a sense of wholeness or fullness or transcendence. But that's all a misunderstanding, because it's doing the ignorance too. Unfathomably. It doesn't make any sense. You can't figure out why it should be that way. But it's doing the ignorance. It's playing hide, it's like God is playing hide and seek with itself. God, unfathomably has, one of its major modes is it forgets itself. It pretends it can't see itself, and it sees itself as whatever sort of insane scenario of separate beings living in a material world that objectively exists and with other beings and so on and so forth. It's just the way like we forget ourselves when we dream at night, usually, You go into a dream and all of a sudden you're just completely gullible. You're sucked into it, right? You're just believing it. You buy it hook, line, and sinker. Here I am in a dream, and you completely accept the premises of the dream and the event that's going on, and you're trying to solve problems and talk to people and run away from things or whatever it is you're trying to do, right?
Right.
But, then all of a sudden you go lucid in a dream, and you look and you go, oh my God, that's not what's happening at all. None of that is actually happening. There's something entirely different. It's a whole different order, a whole different scale of phenomena than what it seems to be when you're sucked into it. And yet, it's the dreaming itself that gets lost in itself. And when you go lucid, it's the dreaming itself that sees itself. And exactly the same thing happens in spirituality. The confusion and not seeing it are it. And when you really see what this is most profoundly, or let's say with some degree of finality that might be called realization or liberation, at that point you no longer care whether or not you're in ignorance, whether or not you get sucked into a story, because you don't give a shit, because you know that it's all this transcendence.
Right. Well, it's amazing that that system can see itself from that point of view, even for an instant. It's like a periscope goes up or something, and you're seeing over the entire ocean or something.
Yeah, the whole thing's amazing. That it can miss itself, that it can see itself, that it even shows itself, that it even presents itself as all this in the first place is all it's inconceivable. It's miraculous.
Yeah.
It's unfathomable.
Right. Thanks.
I used to think that recognition was a vital, important part of this. And I kind of woke up from a dream last night and realized that there was just this enormous dream and I was only aware of one tiny aspect of it. And it's like there's so much that goes on that isn't even recognized. I mean, there's just all this vast universe that just keeps going, and within our own lives, there's just so much that just keeps going, and there's not even any awareness of it, and yet it's so abundant that it just keeps churning out.
Yeah, and the important fact is not to see it or know it or even recognize it. But the important fact is to feel it, and when you feel it, you'll feel that you are it. So you don't need to micromanage it, you don't need to be aware of all the details. You can be completely oblivious to all of it, but it is you, and it is whole, it is a fullness, it is a generosity, it is, unending life. And you can feel that without needing to prove it by going into every detail and following this and following that and following this and following that. This is very profoundly about feeling. This is not about, in these meetings we do a lot of talking and that sort of thing, but this is not about ideas, this is not about concepts, it's not even about understanding, it's really about feeling, because what's going on here is profoundly textual. Experience is felt. Experience is a textual experience. And in the feeling of it is where it shows what it is. In the feeling of it is where it reveals itself. And not in a rational way, not in a verbal way, certainly, not in a way that makes any sense whatsoever, but in an actual way that is luscious and full and rich and profoundly meaningful. But it's not a logical meaningfulness, it's not a rational meaningfulness, it's just a meaningfulness of lusciousness, of richness, of actuality. And in this feeling, you are feeling yourself, you're feeling your own being. Your life is the sphere of your being, and you are feeling all of it, you always are feeling all of it. And in letting yourself feel that, notice that you are feeling all of your life, and certain details come to the fore and rise to your experience, and you notice it, and you see it, and you look at it, and you see something, or whatever, and it disappears. And that's not what it's about. It's about the fullness within which all of these little things occur. And that fullness is completely felt.
Do you mean as a context of it?
Yeah, it is a context, but it's not a context per se. It doesn't know it's a context because it doesn't have an explanation like that. It's the substance of this, it's the actuality of this. This actuality of experience is full. It shines, it's alive, unstoppably. And it always appears as this or that, but it's not dependent on what it looks like or what it appears as. It's not dependent upon the appearances coming and going. It's dependent upon what it is, which is this fullness. So you can call it context, or substance, or the full sphere of its being. You can think of it like the ocean. Particular experiences are like waves, but this fullness is like the ocean that the waves happen in. And so you see something, or you think something, or you feel something, or you hear something. It's like a wave, but these waves are occurring in this ocean of absolute fullness that is what shows up, but it's also where what shows up comes from and where it goes to when it disappears. It is the background and the foreground. So it's the context, but it's not just context, it's everything, it's the whole thing. But it doesn't need to be made explicit. That's really the point I'm trying to make here. You don't need to catalog it, you don't need to see it, you don't need to, sequentially catch this part of it, and then this part of it, and then this part of it, and this part of it, so you get it all. It's not like that at all. You just get the wholeness of it, and you feel that you are it, and then it continually proves itself, or demonstrates itself, displays itself by these different apparitions that show up in our different fields of experience. But these apparitions arise from this depth, and appears and then disappears back into the depth, but the depth is always right here. And you feel this. It's not something you can make sense of. You can't know it. You can't even really talk about it, even though I'm sort of vaguely doing so. But you can feel it, because you are it. So you are feeling it, so you can feel it.
Well, it seems to show itself.
Yeah, sure.
From time to time, and move from the context or the depth or the wholeness to the incidental or the...
Well, it always does. I mean, it's doing that every instant. All of the specifics that show up in experience are exactly that. I mean, experience is that. Experience is this constant, the waves rising and sinking back, constantly. You know, what you see, what you hear, what you think is exactly that, always. And sometimes you can notice that process more, and other times you're just sort of lost in misinterpretations. But even that doesn't matter, because it is what it is, and it's here, whether or not you're noticing it.
Hi.
Hi.
One of the silly fights that I have with my husband is that he'll say to me, well, you can choose to feel any way you want. And I'll say, no, I'm not choosing this feeling. This is how I feel. And we go back and forth on this, because he seems to be able to choose his feelings, and I seem to not be able to, grab on and shift. When I'm feeling something, it, goes through me with a lot of power. Mm-hmm. But he's able to step outside of that and not be affected. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to chalk it up to different personalities. I used to blame myself for being so emotional, and now I'm embracing it more as an important aspect of who I am.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And not blaming him for being different.
Yeah, people are so unique, we're all so different from each other. It's easy to have the fantasy that we're all pretty much the same, and we're all kind of, we're all very slight variations of each other. But I don't think so. I think people are very, very, very different. And people can, particularly in terms of their personalities, the way they function, the way they work, their different modes, their natural modes, so radically different. And it's, in terms of getting along with people, it's wise to acknowledge that and not expect other people to be like we are, and give people the space, the acknowledgement that it's not just okay for them to be who they are and the way they are, but there's no alternative. So to want it to be different is to bang your head against the wall. But you can't be other than what you are at the moment. Which is subject to constant and continual unfoldment and development and change and so on and so forth, of course, but only as it actually is, not in terms of some way you'd like it to be or some way you're trying to pretend it to be or something like that. We all are what we are. That's an actuality.
And to love ourselves through it.
Yeah. Accept it, because the way you are is your path, is your vehicle, is your power. your great advantage is that you are who you are. So far, I mean, in our society, we're so full of self-loathing, typically because there's so many models out there of, oh, you're supposed to be like this, you're supposed to be like this, you're supposed to look like this, you're supposed to act like this, you're supposed to, achieve like this, but that's all, it's craziness, because, it just generates this kind of a self-loathing or a self-deprecation where we assess ourselves as being inadequate because we don't look like such and such a person, or we don't act like such and such a person. And it's an absurdity. You can't. How can you not be you? You can't not be you. It's an impossibility. And we cut ourselves off from our very power. Your greatest asset is that you're you. Your being you gives you unique strengths and opportunities and modes of functioning that no one else has access to. So you're like a unique work of art or something that is not like any other work of art that's ever been done, and so that gives you an advantage. That gives you, let's just call it an advantage. And so your greatest opportunity is to take advantage of that advantage rather than try to deny it or downplay it or feel bad because you're the way you are. It's silly. It's absurd. I realize it's probably an epidemic in our cultures, in our society, psychologically, to do so. But it's really a pity because it's our uniqueness that's our greatest strength. I mean, any individual's uniqueness is their greatest strength. Because the shortest path for you to your fullness is your very nature. Nothing outside yourself. Not becoming something else, but being what you are fully.
And all that we've been gets carried through the timeline with all that we are now.
Well, it's all a part, it's all the same thing, it's the same process. And the way all that works is actually unfathomable. Time isn't what we think it is, and history isn't what we think it is. And growth and development isn't what we think they are. They're definitely, it's actual, it's real, but the way it actually works and what it actually consists of is inconceivable and multidimensional, and it's completely beyond our simple ideas of it. But absolutely, yeah, everything, your entire being is you. You are it. It's genuine. And it is your greatest strength.
Thank you.
You think it's possible that...
Just a sec.
So you're saying it is possible that if one was there from the beginning, let's say the time of the Big Bang, whenever they came to be, then they have a collective memory of all the different lives they've been through.
Well, maybe, but memory isn't what we think it is either. We think of memory as being of history and of being of an objective chain of events, but it's not actually like that. So, memory is inclusive, but what memory is and what time is and what history is isn't what we think it is. In a very strong sense, there is no time. In a very strong sense, there is no event. Which is not to deny history or to downplay it, but just to say it's not what we think it is. But it's not important because what is important is what is right here now, and history is right here now. What history really is this that's happening right now. History is not somewhere back then. History is now. And what history actually is now. So we have complete access to the fullness of experience in the present moment, which is our complete access to history.
So the way the sun shined a year ago on this day, would that not indicate time?
No, because a year ago on this day it was now. And the way the sun shines now is the way it shined a year ago today, only now is the way it is now. I mean, it can't be said, it can't be explained or deconstructed because it doesn't make it, it's not rational.
Thanks.
What to do?
Hi, Peter.
Hi.
Hi. Well, this morning I was out at the Vedanta retreat in Lima, and we're sitting under this oak tree, and I started noticing, I don't think I noticed it before, all the ants crawling around on the leaves, and then there was something that was going 10 times faster than the ants, and that I think that was flies. I'm not sure. And then I looked up, and there was all these moths flying around, and I know they have some kind of, I wish I knew what their function was with the oak trees, but I didn't know. And I looked over and saw all the, gopher holes, and then there was a pair of hawks up there, and I know somehow they're all related, and, and the way they were talking, like the Supreme Self, over and over, and, you start to think, gee, there's just one thing, and I've been fragmenting all this stuff together, and if you go down into the earth, there's all these levels of microorganisms and everything like that, and it was pretty interesting.
Sure. And the same thing with all the atoms. I mean, you start looking at all the atoms.
Didn't think about that.
All the atoms in your body, the atoms in the things around you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a whole other level of,
Right.
manifest intelligent systems interacting. The whole. I mean, it's just the entire thing. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just kind of amazing.
Yeah.
They got the two monks are not separate,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, amazingness is the path to divinity. So it's a good place to hang out.
Good start.
Yeah, hang out in amazingness, and you're doing great.
Let's see, what's the question? Well, let me find it. How does radiance do recollection?
It can't be known how it does it. It is recollection. It can't be deconstructed. I mean, again, when we look at our experience, we seem to see all these things that seem to be differentiable. There's presence, there's recollection, there's communication, there's the conceptualization, there's all these different kinds of, they seem to be sort of relatively separate or discrete kind of functionings or something. But actually, radiance is only doing one thing. And what it's doing is what we call all of these different things. So, it can't be said, it can't be answered, it can't be explained. It does not make any sense. Yeah. Do they?
There was something, I think, when Buddha, after he attained enlightenment, I guess when he was preaching it, he says he saw that there was like 24 other people that reached the same place, but they didn't bother letting others know about it.
Mm-hmm.
So how would he have discovered something like that?
Ask
him.
Yeah. But again, all these kinds of questions like how this works or how something can happen or the way it works, all of these are ultimately unanswerable in a strong sense that what's actually happening is different than what the question implies. In other words, we think, again, we have a misunderstood worldview that we look at things in terms of, and we think of actions and activities and events in terms of these understandings we hold, but these understandings we hold are entirely wrong. There's actually no space, there's actually no time, there's actually only one being here. There's not lots of individuals, but we usually don't see it that way, and so we see things in terms of, there's space and times and many beings and so on, this and that and the other, which is not correlate with the actuality. So we ask questions in terms of this erroneous view of, there is space and there is time and there are a bunch of individuals, but so a true answer can't be given in terms of the question, because the terms of the question actually don't even apply even vaguely. What's happening here is inconceivably strange, inconceivably weird, and entirely beyond the wildest fantasy or the wildest philosophical speculation that any human has ever made. What's actually happening here is mind-bogglingly weird. And so, trying to approach it or analyze it or ask questions about it from within any degree of sort of a normal framework or a normal worldview just doesn't apply, because what's actually happening just is not happening in those terms.
But there is a way to survive with this view, with viewing it in terms of radiance or awareness.
Yes, there is a way to watch it. I'm sorry.
To survive in the current world.
Oh, certainly. Well, survival is doing itself, because surviving in the current world is not a problem, because there is no world and there is nothing but survival. I mean, here you are, you've survived your entire life. Where did that come from? How's that happen? It's a mystery, it's just that the life force survives, is what it does. And it functions. And functioning, we usually we think we're functioning in the world, we're remembering things and we're doing things and we're, meeting requirements and behaving in certain ways. But actually all that's a misunderstanding. None of that's actually happening as such. It's actually the radiance that's doing all of that. Like, you can think of it like in a dream. In a dream it can seem as though you're doing all these different things and achieving things and trying to solve problems and all these various different things. But in actuality none of that's really happening. The only thing that's actually happening in the dream is the dreaming itself. The dreaming consciousness projecting these events as if they were actually happening, and they seem to be happening, but it's not actually like that. And that's very similar to what's happening here, where all of the sort of explicit functioning and surviving and behaving in certain ways and so on and so forth, we think we're doing it, and we think that we have to do certain things in order to achieve certain things, but things don't actually work that way. Everything is directly radiated, and everything happens the way it does because it's directly radiated, not because of the way it seems to be behaving or happening. Like in a dream, you can seem like you need to drive a car, so you get in the car and you take the key out of your pocket and you put the key in the car and you turn it and the car starts. But, did the car start because you put the key in it? No, the car started because it was dreamed to start. And the key was in your pocket because it was dreamed there. And you put the key in the car because it was dreamed there. But none of that needed to happen at all. It just happened to happen that way because of the dreaming, not because of the key or because you had it or because of anything like that. See? And the events in our lives are very similar. We think we're doing this, and I have to do this in order to do that, and then I have to do this in order to do that. But actually, all these there's no causality like that, the way we think of it. There's no causality where I have to do, if this happens, that causes that to happen. It's not like that. Everything is caused by direct radiation. Everything is directly radiated into existence, and all functionality is just intrinsic in that. I mean, that's the actual situation, which may sound kind of abstract, but if you look and see, you can discover that this is the case, because you can see it for yourself directly.
Well, when he asked this question, I was thinking about, so I've never been in an automobile accident. Was I lucky that I haven't been in an automobile accident? Or?
No, that's just the way. That's just what happened. And if you had been in an automobile accident, you would be no more or less lucky. You can't say. It just wasn't your. It wasn't your path to be in an automobile accident. And automobile accidents aren't good or bad. They're just events that are an aspect of the unfoldment of your karma, the unfoldment of yourself. And everything that happens in your life is like that. Everything that happens is what is necessary for you to go through to be yourself, to be what you are.
Yeah. I was, I don't know, I was listening to the radio or something, and there was like 4 Stanford students that were going to Big Sur, and the driver fell asleep, and they went over the cliff. And that was it, And
He'll do it.
Yeah. Just, I don't know.
But that was their path.
Yeah, apparently. I want to ask you also about, I was watching this program on the history of England last night, and they've, had all these famines, and first they were taken over by the Romans, and they were taken over by the Vikings, and they were taken over by the Normans, which were the French. And so food, this is the Malthus thing, food, people go 2, 4, 8, 16, and food goes 1, 2, 3, 4. And he says something is going to bring it into balance. So my question is there some kind of intelligence that's actually working this out and says it's time to bring in the Normans now? And
yes.
Wow. Yeah. That's good.
Everything is completely on purpose.
Wow. Okay.
There's no mistakes. It's all the direct, unmediated will of God.
Do you want to explain that?
It can't be explained. It doesn't make any sense. Well, a simple way to explain it, I don't know how much you'll find it clarifying or not, but a simple way to explain it is everything happens because what makes it happen that way is that way. So there's a one-to-one correlation between what happens and why it happens. So in that sense, there's absolutely no accidents. In other words, the nature of reality is such that everything has to be exactly the way it is, without specifying what any of those are.
So we were talking the other day about something that really tickled me. You're talking about it like how small humanness is in relation to the totality of things. How really, really small it was, and insignificant.
Yeah, in the immediacy of your experience. If you look at your experience, the bubble of your experience, the portions of it that you can identify as human, or your personality, or you and your body and your world and your life and all that, is actually just infinitesimally small. It's like a tiny speck of light in the vast, vast, vast night sky. Because most of your experience exists outside of the context of anything that is describable or anything you can relate to in human terms. All of these subtle moods and vibes and flavors that just don't have anything to do with anything. And, not having anything to do with anything is a euphemism for not being related to the human frame of reference. And most of our experience is actually like that. I mean, you see that when you go to sleep at night. You see that when you just close your eyes, and just sort of let yourself space out, and all of a sudden, what is all that? Where is it all? What's that have to do with anything human? And it's just, you know. But this is the case, and it's directly experienceable. You know, we are vast energy system, and only a very small portion of that is identifiable in terms of humanness or personality or individuality or personal history and that kind of stuff. I mean, just feel the system of your prana, feel the system of your energies, and what is that? It opens into, where is your individuality in that context? It's just a really small little template being superimposed on this huge actuality that has absolutely nothing to do with anything, human per se. Or you just look at the stars, and don't just look at them in the abstract, feel that the actual presence of that. What does that have to do with being human? And yet it's in you. When you see the night sky, you're seeing in your experience. You're seeing in your field of being. And what is it? What's that have to do with life? But it's you as much as your personality is, or your memory, or your body, or your quirks and modes of behavior and all that kind of thing.
Right. Well, it sort of seems like I'm thinking in terms of like all the other things in the entire galaxy and beyond, whatever, seem to support your humanness, so to speak. I mean, your humanness sort of rides on the...
Yeah. Well, it all coexists. It's a small it's like an island. It's like the Hawaiian Islands in the Pacific Basin. The whole Pacific Basin supports the Hawaiian Islands, but the Pacific Basin is huge and the Hawaiian Islands are tiny.
Right.
Or like a star in space. The star is an expression of space. The star doesn't just happen to be in space. The nature of space is such that it puts a star there. So the star is an expression of the vastness of non-star. And likewise, the individuality is an expression of the vastness of non-individuality, which yet is the one system, is you. But you aren't you, the human. You is you, the whole system of being, the whole energy system, of which a very small part looks like a human being.
Right. Well, I like the term you used when we were talking about it. You said like all this human stuff is just sort of like car exhaust.
Technical term. I don't know the Sanskrit for car exhaust, but I'm sure they had a good one.
Thanks.
So, when I came in tonight, I had and still have a flush of bodily experiences, buzzing and a lot of activity that I'm aware of. And it's been happening the last couple of years. Sometimes it arrives and other times not. And so is this what you mean by sensing?
Sure, it's part of it, absolutely.
And it just happens. I have no control over it. And
sure, there's always a full field of, let's call them experiential qualities happening, and it always changes and it always shows up in different ways. And sometimes it can seem to be this, and sometimes it can seem to be that, and different things come to the fore at different times. And any and all of it is a revelation of what this is. None of it is more or less important than any other portions of it. But yes, absolutely. So, when you're just feeling the energy of anything that is present, is feeling reality. You're feeling reality itself. It's not like reality is over there somewhere doing all this, and somehow there's some distance or some mediation, What is present in your experience, energies that are present in your experience that you are experiencing, is reality itself showing itself forth. So experience is very, very profound. We're trained, we're brainwashed to demean our experience and belittle it and think of it as, it's just my life, this is nothing, but somewhere out there's something great, It's completely wrong, it's completely inaccurate. Experience itself is the absolute, unmediated, direct revelation of reality itself. And so any quality of experience, particularly any experience that catches your attention or that seems to have some dynamism or some mystery or some vitality to it, is a direct channel into the very deepest, the very highest aspects of reality. So, this is the simplest and most direct yoga, is just to be with the texture of any experience that presents itself. And you are with reality itself.
I can feel that.
Yeah. Well, it's the truth. It's absolutely the truth. And so it is, you can feel it, you can know that. And that knowing is a very profound knowing. That knowing is very, very profound. It's there's no limit. That in itself, just that, as a practice, just that alone is the very highest yoga. It'll take you right to divinity, very efficiently and very directly. This is our greatest advantage. Experience is reality. Experience is reality. So you are touching, just by experiencing, you are touching the highest, the most profound, the greatest depth, the greatest fullness, etc., the ultimate transcendence is right here, right now, as your experience. And this is incredible. This is such a great good fortune. It's such an opportunity. It's the shortest of the short paths directly to divinity. It's just to notice that and to ride, so to speak, this presence that is present. It's actually present. This is an actuality, right? Your experience is an actuality. It's actually present, and that is the very presence of reality itself, with a capital R. And just feeling that is the finish line. Just feeling that. You don't need to make sense of it or sort it out or think about it or do a doctoral thesis on it. Just need to just feel it, and just in that contact, it shows you what it is, irrationally and directly. It transmits itself. And this is ultimately profound. This is the greatest profundity.
Okay, I just had a question. See the curtain here? Is the curtain telling you anything about itself or about the nature of the universe or anything like that?
Yes.
What?
It's showing me the absolute nature of the divine. Because it is present, it displays infinite qualities, it displays infinite dynamism, it displays the nature of space and time and consciousness, which is all that there is. It displays the nature of apparition, the nature of qualitative energies appearing within consciousness.
Does it say I am nothing also?
Well, that's intrinsic in that. It's not nothing. It's just not anything. It's not what you think.
Right.
It's not a curtain.
Peter, you slipped one over on us a while back, and I can't. Would you reiterate the part when you were saying something about creation is just the objectivity? It is just the well, what you said that had the significance of what you said as I read it, and I can't. I'd like to hear you say it again. I don't know if I can elicit it now after this time, but. You were saying that objectivity, which you've made this point about objectivity for quite a while recently, that there is only object, there is no subject.
Right.
We just applied that to God a while back,
Yeah.
in a sentence or two that you made,
Yeah.
and it slipped over. And that was an interesting point because I hadn't thought about that, I hadn't realized it, and it's just kind of a bombshell. God has no subjectivity either.
Right.
Yeah, like that's sure, but that's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's fascinating, but it doesn't make any sense. It's more interesting from a point of view of a yogic perspective, you might say. The nature of presence, i.e. the nature of experience, is completely unfathomable. We have these sort of simplistic logical models of, there's a subjective consciousness and it's experiencing some objective reality through some interchange of energies or whatever. But all these theories are just pie in the sky. It's just manufactured logical terms. In actual fact, all there is presence. And what is present, what we call experience, is this presence. And what is present is these inconceivable infinite qualitative energies that I call radiance, that it's present in a way that is unfathomable and undescribable. And that is the objective fact, the fact of this radiant presence. And everything whatsoever, the things that we experientially consider the most subjective aspects, when in observation, are seen to be radiant presence. They're seen to be actually objective, and no subjectivity can actually be found. There is the very strange fact that that experience seems to appear, but it can rest in its strangeness as a simple fact. It is strange that is so, without explanation and without needing to have subjectivity. If you think of the absolute, let's say God is the absolute. If God exists, which it does, reality exists, then it is. Then that fact is the objective case. It is the objective case. It's the objective fact that yes, this exists, and this exists as a presence. And here's this presence, and this presence is that presence. And it doesn't need to make sense in terms of, well, how does that happen? It's gibberish, because there's no basis for scale or mechanism or anything to even get your foot in that door. You know, it's entirely unfathomable. It's entirely, essentially miraculous. But from a yogic point of view, you know, we deal in practicalities. And what's practical is that this presence is actually here, is actually present, and this is enormously powerful. So we actually have access to this presence. We actually have access to this point of contact of absolute objectivity, which is literally absolute in this case. And then trying to deconstruct, you know, subjectivity is a simple way to put it in logical terms is if subjectivity is actual, then that's objectively true. So subjectivity boils down to objectivity anyway.
In other words, the creation created God.
Yeah, and God is that creation.
I mean, I'm not trying to save God because I'm not particularly invested in that. But
right.
but
God's
there is
just a word for this objective fact.
Yes,
this objective fullness.
There is this residual belief system that's just come from forever, that there's a creator, and he said, "Let there be light," or he said something in some language, some culture. But the subject-object on the divine level or on the cosmic level exists. I can say there's only objectivity here, and I can look for myself and not find myself and say, yeah, it sounds like that's right. But this unquestioned and even almost unconscious belief that there is an ultimate subjectivity of creator and creation, poof, it's gone.
Yeah.
So I celebrate that.
Because the creator is the objectivity. It bootstraps itself up. Because as creator, it is, that fact is the objective fact, so it's objective.
Yeah, what you see is what you get.
Yeah, what you see is what you get. Is the vernacular way of putting that esoteric truth. What's our time?
Isn't the seeing of that, though, what we normally call subjectivity? The recognition of that creates as a seeingness, a seeing.
Yeah, but that's an unnecessary complication. The seeing is actually a settling, a letting go into presence, which is objective. There's nothing that sees the objectivity. There's just, you know, letting go into the objectivity, and then there's nothing but the objectivity, and that constitutes the seeing. Seeing is just a misnomer. It has implications which are inaccurate.
Well, the knowing of it, the knowing of objectivity.
But knowing is presence. Presence is knowing, and presence is objective. Knowing is another word that has implications that are inaccurate. Because knowing implies there's a knower and something known, but it's not like that. Knowing is actually presence. You know that there is light in your experience because light is present. So, I know that there's light is a euphemism for light is present. And there doesn't need to be any I or any no. It's just a way of putting it that is archaic and inaccurate. Light is present. Can you add to that? You can't add to it significantly. Light is present. How is it present? I can't say. It can't be said how it's present. That it's present is self-evident, undeniable, and that fact alone is sufficient. There's no other. You don't need to add anything to it. It's not incomplete. There's nothing missing. Experience is present. That's a complete statement. There's nothing left out. There's no. But what about?
So the same with the feeling that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, by feeling I mean, releasing into presence, into the objective fact of presence. And that is feeling. Presence is feeling, and presence is objective, so feeling is objective. We have all of these words that imply, have implications that are inaccurate, because our language is so, is modeled on such fantastic, delusory premises that just don't apply even slightly. Our language is essentially dualistic, and there's no such thing in reality, so you can use language, but you have to translate it. You can use language accurately, but you have to translate it. I have a page on my website that's devoted to the semantic confusion, and it's really a problem for us. It's part of our poor brainwashing and our poor upbringing, is that we were given the semantic system, which actually has absolutely nothing to do with reality, and has structural implications that are completely erroneous. So in language we have subject and object where there's in actuality no such thing. In language we have diverse objects that are differentiable from each other when in reality there's no such thing, and so on and so forth.
Well, it seems like any kind of add-on to a feeling, any kind of judgment of it or interpretation of it or recognition of it, that creates its subjectivity.
Well, it might, but if there's anything like that, it is felt. So it collapses into objectivity. If there's a feeling about feeling, then that feeling about feeling is felt, and so right away it's just presence. Or there can be or there can be a dislike of something, and that dislike is actually felt, so it's actually presence. It's actually an objective, qualitative presentation. There's nothing but these objective, qualitative presentations, what we call objects of experience. And everything, no matter how intimate that we're used to identifying as ourselves, our feelings, our thoughts, our sensations, our most subtle intuitions, are actually objective experiences. They're energies that are present in experience, right? They're textural presences. Otherwise, how would you know they were there?
Wow, it is such a slippery slope.
It is. But we just let go and cascade down, and then it doesn't matter. Take up skiing. Let gravity win. Just don't think about things. We're like a computer that's been given a faulty programming language. And so as soon as you think about anything, you're generating inaccuracy just by that very fact.
Well, you could, from what you were saying before, that is an objectivity too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an objective fact. But you may not recognize it as an objective fact because you're trying to follow the erroneous implications as if they were true.
But the following is the subjectivity.
No, the following is an objective fact as well.
Objective, but there's this convincing that it is a...
But convincing is an objective fact. It's felt. Experience is felt, and by that fact it is objective presence. It's that simple. And if you look at the way in which it's felt, you can't get a handle on it. There's nothing there. There's no evidence you can generate from that investigation. It's like the police trying to go into a crime scene and saying who done it, and they're finding no one did it. There's no evidence. They're screwed. There's no perp. No fingerprints, no evidence, no hair. The door was locked. No one came in. No one left. So it's like that, we're looking at the experience, and you're looking for the evidence of the experiencer, and it's just like that. You're not going to find evidence. You're not going to find a fingerprint. You're not going to find, the tiniest trace of evidence. I mean, I invite you to do so, because anything you find is objective, not subjective, because it exists, and existence is objectivity. Think about it. If it exists, it's objectively the case. And existence is synonymous with existence in what we call experience. Or let's say experience is synonymous with existence. And existence is nothing other than presence. And what is present? All of these astounding array of radiant characteristics. That's all, and there's nothing else, there's nothing missing there. That's all that there is. Anywhere you look, that's what you find, and there's no other category of presence that you can find.
There's a looking for it. The looking for it is...
But if there's looking, then that is an objective fact. That's another textual presence. It's the radiance looking for itself.
So is it
Here, wait.
I mean, other than through death, is it possible to not think?
No. But thought occurs on various degrees of subtlety. But it's always, let's say there's always energy occurring in mind. But it can be more overt energy, it can be more subtle. It's like waves at the ocean, when it's stormy, there's big waves, if it's absolutely calm, you can say, gosh, there's no waves. But if you look closely, there's waves, they're just little, delicate waves. And thought is like that. But everything's like that, The field of, all fields of experience are always full. The field of vision is always full. So you open your eyes, or you're in a bright place, or in busy traffic, it's very obviously full with bright colors and flashing and changing. You close your eyes, it seems to be there's nothing there, but it's still full. It's full of subtle little flashes and little patches of gray and things like this, I mean, we don't really have words for what that is, but there's always light present. You go to sleep, light is present. You start dreaming, light is present. You wake up, light is present. You close your eyes, light is present. You open them again, light is present. So the field of vision is always full. Field of thought is always full. Field of sensation is always full. Again, the qualities of experience come in different sort of levels of magnitude or different levels of density. So, you go like that, and it's a extreme sort of a dense sensation. But if you're just sitting calmly and not moving and not touching anything, there's not much sensation. But it's still you feel that your field of sensation is still full. It's all buzzing. It's all alive. And the same is true with mind or any aspect. Experience is always full. It never is less full or more full. It's just full with different degrees of sort of density or activity, sort of obviousness of activity or whatever. Oh, the boss tells me it's quitting time. So thank you all very much for coming, and I wish you a good night.
Thank you.
Hit the music. Music.